Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and today we're going to talk about the hidden, deeper meaning of Chanukah. Now let's again, before we get into the deeper meaning, let's talk about the basic idea of what Chanukah is, and then we'll go deeper from there. Now Chanukah, we have to go back into history, that about 2,500 years ago, that the Jewish people were living in Israel, but even though they were living in Israel, they were conquered by the Greeks. Alexander the Great, again, if you remember your ancient history, he conquered the world, and Israel's right in the middle of the world, the known world at that time. You have Europe, and if you want to put in your left corner, you have Asia to the upper right-hand corner, Africa's below. So really, there are maps, ancient maps that show this. I mean, without all the countries, just look at the continents themselves. If you want to look for a middle point, it really is the land of Israel. So if someone's going to conquer the known world at that time, they have to go through Israel if they were really going to be a world conqueror. And they did. And the Jewish people, actually the truth of the matter is, we're getting along with the Greeks for a number of times. And it's a very, very interesting story. How that happened is from the Talmud. And it says that Alexander the Great, again, we remember him from our ancient history lessons, conquered the world. And he wanted to put up an idol of himself. In those days, if you're a conqueror, you think you were a god, you get to your head that you think you're the greatest thing in the world. I mean, they were number one, Alexander the Great, but he's not a god. And he wanted to put a statue. He says, well, I'll respect all religions. And those days wasn't like one or two religions. Today you have everybody's a Christian, a Muslim in the world around that area, or there's Jewish. There's so many different kind of religions. And they said, well, I mean, I'll respect your temple. I'm not going to destroy your temples, but you have to put my statue up there. I'm also a god. You have many gods. I'm also a god. So other religions say, fine, we'll put up another statue, and fine. Well, of course, in Judaism, that's the second commandment. Don't have any other gods. It's only one God. You can't put up a statue of a god. So they said, well, we can't. So the governors and the generals were so mad. Says, well, this is an affront to Alexander the Great. We're going to get angry and we're going to do oppression. Alexander the Great said no, because I'll tell you what his story is. Because the Jewish people, or the Israelis at that time, knew Alexander the Great was coming. They knew they couldn't beat them up. So therefore, they just said better to live under their reign and not fight. And, a lot of, people are going to die by rebelling. We're going to lose anyway. So the high priest, there was one high priest in the temple, came out to meet Alexander the Great. And he came out just to say, we're at peace, don't fight, no problem. And Alexander the Great, of course, like we say, he's number one. He got off his beautiful steed and he bowed to the high priest, and the generals who were obviously escorting him and couldn't believe it. You're the greatest, and here you're going to beat them up. They're a colony of yours, you're not subservient to them. What are you bowing down to this high priest? He says, you don't understand. He says, every time I was conquering the world in different countries, it wasn't the first country he conquered, I saw always this image of this high priest, and I see that he's a very holy person, and that's why I bow down to him. And they said, listen, he says that we don't want to put up a statue for you because it's against our religion. Only one God, no statues, and but we're going to give you something even better. What's even better? He says, a statue, listen, let's face it, you're here today, gone tomorrow. A statue, and as we all know, and most of these ancient religions aren't even around today. So you're here today, gone tomorrow. We're going to give you an everlasting remembrance. What's that? Every male, meaning every boy that's born this year, we're going to name him Alexander. and therefore, I mean, they're going to grow up. They're going to be a father, or they're going to be a grandfather. In Judaism, they don't name after a living person, but someone will name after their grandson, so they'll perpetuate that name. And lo and behold, that's why today Alexander's a Greek name. There are Jewish people that are named Alexander. So even if, like I said, about 2,300 years ago till today, that his memory actually perpetuated through the Jewish people. In any case, things were going well. Like I said, that's why I want to bring out there was peace at the beginning. But then the Greeks really had a different philosophy than the Jewish people. Not only different gods, but different philosophy. And as you see today, again, 2,300 years ago, look in today's society, that even in college they call it the Greeks. You know, you have Phi Beta Kappa. Why do you have all these different Greek names for things? So fraternities, sororities, like I say, honors, they call it with Greek names. What's with the Greeks? We're in the United States. What's with the Greek? So the answer is because the Greeks were so a high level of intellect. I mean, who's the ancient people? You know, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. These were all Greek people. So the idea of intellectual ideas started, I mean, I don't know if it started, but was really incredible importance by the Greeks. And even today, that's why in the universities, high-level thinking, they have the Greeks. Fine. So that's one thing. And the second thing is we know, and again, even today, is we have the Olympics every 4 years, but we have the Olympics. And where did the Olympics come from? Again, you can look in the encyclopedia, and they would say that they came from the Greeks. And the marathons, which every city has, big cities have marathons, it really comes, that 26 miles comes from a Greek idea. So here we have the intellect and sports. I mean, obviously they didn't play basketball in the Greeks, but again, the Olympics, the idea of running and racing or just being physically fit was, again, maybe it didn't start with the Greeks, but was very big importance by the Greeks. Now, that's the Greeks. Compare that to the Jewish people. On one hand, that there's a lot of intellectual material in Judaism. There's the Mishnah, the Gemara. No one, even anti-Semites, no one will say the Gemara is for stupid people. They say Talmudic logic is really even a phrase. It's very, very smart, and no one's going to say that they're just stupid. And so there is intellectual ideas in Judaism, to say the least. I mean, and then the tremendous once you get into it, but all right. And then the second thing is really you're supposed to be healthy. Idea of fasting or self-mortification really isn't a major part of Judaism. I mean, there is a fasting on Yom Kippur and a few days a year, but again, you're supposed to be healthy. As the Rambam Maimonides says clearly that a healthy body is part of the ways of serving God. So nothing's wrong with being healthy and exercising. People should be healthy and exercise. And again, there's nothing wrong with thinking, which again, on the contrary, you should be thinking and using your intellectual capacity as much as you can. So where's the conflict? Now the answer is just where's the influence? The influence of the Greeks was the material world, use your brain, intellect. Well, that's very nice, being an intellectual, but there's certain things that are above intellect. And main thing is God. You cannot think of God. It's a very Kabbalistic idea, getting deeper about it. God is not to be known. He is the knowledge, the known, and the knower. That's something we cannot understand. I mean, when we get, like, you learn, like I have grandchildren, and they learn, here's 2 little things, 2 candies and 3 candies, and you get 5 candies. So it's not automatic. You have to teach children how to add. Well, once they know how to add, it's in their head and they know it. On the other hand, though, they weren't born with it. So you say that's added on to them. Now they know it. They weren't born with knowledge of arithmetic or any other subject. That's why you go to school, because you didn't know it before, and now you're taught, and now you know it. But God is the known. He is the knowledge. Something maybe even impossible to understand. But that's the idea of God. He's beyond intellect. He's beyond knowledge. And the Greeks said knowledge is the main thing. So there was a conflict there. It wasn't, the Judaism really wasn't sync with the Greek philosophy. And again, we said to be healthy, but the main idea isn't to work out every day 4 hours in the gym to show how much muscles you are and be a Mr. America. Yes, be healthy. Yes, exercise. Again, it's not only not against, it's part of Judaism, but you don't have to show how you're the biggest muscle man in the world and you're the best runner in the world. Be fit, be healthy, fine. But you don't have to show you're the biggest, like I say, Mr. America, Mr. Universe, the biggest muscles, and obviously how many hours and hours are spending in the gym in order to get those muscles. Do what you have to do and go working out or jogging, whatever it is, and be done with it. So again, those two ideas really were antithesis to Judaism, because Judaism says the spirituality is the main thing. Yes, again, I keep on emphasizing that, not to say you're supposed to eat and you're supposed to stay fit, but the main thing in life is the spirituality, or to think about God, not just to see how smart we are. So those things were in conflict. So therefore, that was a rub with the Jewish people. Now, there's certain commandments that are very, very, people take about intellectual and they're nice and you get a good feeling. One of them, the biggest commandments, is charity. So who's going to argue with that? You say that you're supposed to give poor people, you're supposed to help people out. Who's going to argue with that? Again, that's beautiful, it's nice, give some money, help out people. Very good. That's fine. There are mitzvahs like that. And then there's other mitzvahs. For example, one of the ideas that they were found was kosher. So, for example, any animal has to have split hooves and chew their cud to be a kosher animal. Well, that's where you get your cows today. There are other animals, not to get into it here, but let's say cow is your major animal that you see in the market, cow meat. Now, what's wrong with a pig? Well, a pig has split hooves, but it doesn't chew their cud. Well, it's no good, and pig meat is forbidden according to Jewish law. So the Greeks said, well, why not? Who cares? Meat is meat, and like you see today in the markets, they're selling pig meat, pork, and ham all over the place. People are buying it and eating it. It's decent meat. Why can't you Jews eat it? Well, there isn't really a reason for it, and that's called a chok, a law that's beyond understanding. There are many others, and now's not the time to get into a whole dissertation about it. I just gave you one example. So therefore, the Greeks just says, well, we like your religion. You got a beautiful temple in Jerusalem, beautiful architecture. And again, that's one of the things that you see the Greeks with their beautiful architecture and their columns, and that's known today. That it was beautiful, and they appreciate it. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of things to appreciate in Judaism that we say, we love your logic, and we love your building of your temple, but certain things, that's the rub. I don't like this God that's above intellect. We don't like this idea you do commandments. You say, well, what's the reason? We don't have a reason. What do you mean you do something without a reason? Well, we do it because God said it. Well, that's not a reason. They didn't think that was enough of a reason, and that was the rub, the conflict. So therefore, that the Greeks started oppressing the Jewish people, and there was now get into the crunch time, the Modim, that Hashmonayim, it was a priestly family, says, well, we can't live with these kind of people. They went to the hills. And one time, even in the hills, they brought in, a sacrifice, and they said, well, you have to sacrifice a pig. Because again, like they said, what's the difference between, there are sacrifices of animals in the temple, but they're all kosher animals. There's cows, for example, and bulls, but no pigs. So we're going to bring in the pigs over here. We're going to slaughter a pig as a sacrifice. It's craziness. You can't do that. So there was a fight, and they got killed. And then, of course, an oppressive government, we're not going to allow these people to kill our soldiers. So therefore, there became a big fight. And again, as I said really at the beginning, the Greek army ruled the world. And how these ragtag guerrilla warfare are going to beat up the Greeks it is a miracle, and that's what we say. It was the miracle of the Greeks. So they did fight them, and they really pushed them outside, miraculously, outside of Jerusalem. They came into the temple, and they knew that pigs were being slaughtered as sacrifices. They had to make a new altar, because who wants an altar with pig stuff on it? And they said, well, that's fine, but now we have to light the menorah. And because there was always a menorah in the temple, 7 branches. We have 8 today. We'll explain why. But there was 7 in the temple. Now they needed pure oil, because anybody who's impure touches oil, because the oil becomes impure. So they found hidden underneath a cruse of oil that was pure. The trouble was, it was only enough to light the menorah for 1 day. So they said, so we'll light it for 1 day, at least we have one. And it would take a whole week in order to get people purified, in order to make purified oil. But miraculously, the 1 day oil didn't even go down. Obviously, you burn something, it goes down. It extinguishes the oil. But it didn't go down at all. They kept lighting it for 8 days in order for it to get pure oil, and it stayed the same and finally burnt out. But now they had new oil. And that's why today, basic Judaism, that there's idea of the first night of Chanukah, you light 1 candle, second night you light 2, just to remember the 8 days of miracles. So that's really your basic Judaism story, and we're going to go deeper. The miracle is with oil. Now, what is oil? Oil, you have an olive, you eat an olive. When you crush it, you get the essence of the olive, you got olive oil. In the stores, it's pure, there's this kind of extra virgin oil is the purest oil that comes out from the olive oil, from the olive. It's the purest. And that's really the oil that had to be used, because like I say, there's pure oil, different grades of oil. It had to be that first crush of oil, which could be used only for the menorah. Now, it's very, very interesting, and we always say with numbers, you have to look at it. There's 7, as I said, 7 branches in the menorah, and that refers to the 7 different kinds of Jewish people. They're all made out of gold, because it's all gold in the menorah, and there's 7 branches of the menorah, and each menorah refers to a different kind of Jewish person. That fits Kabbalistically, mystical idea. There's 7 emotions. There's 10 spheros, emanations. Out of those 10, there are 7 emotions. For example, just bringing out 2, there's the chesed, there's the kindness, gevura, there's the severity, and there's different kind of people. Nobody is all the same. All people are not the same. Some people are a little bit more kinder. Some people are a little bit more stricter. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad. People have to tune into themselves, who they are. There is good things and bad things about both. What would be an example? That obviously a good thing of kindness, as we said before, charity. You like helping people, that's great. But let's say is good. They always give the example of giving a drunk comes over, an alcoholic comes over to you and says, "I'd like a drink." Well, give him a sandwich to help him out, but don't give him a drink, because that just feeds into his alcoholism. And so that wouldn't be a nice thing, just to give to the wrong thing. Or different examples, just give to a child, "I want this candy in the store, I want this candy in the store, I want this." You don't have to give everything. You're ruining a child by giving them everything. There's got to be limits. So now go to the gevura, which means severity. Bad severity, we don't have to talk about hitting people and pushing people around when you don't like. Obviously, that's no good. But what's a good severity? We kind of said sometimes you have to reprove your child. Hey, go to your room. You're not acting properly. Whatever. Or like putting people in a timeout. You say that for a child. So certain times, gevura, being severe, is the right thing to do. People murder people. They have to be in prison. You can't just say, "Oh, well, we'll be nice and let you keep on going and do what you want. Stay free." You're tough. You got to be tough. Sometimes life, you have to be tough. In any case, with the mystical idea, every person is different. Nothing wrong with that at all. We don't have to be the same. We aren't the same. but we're all part, you understand, all part of the golden menorah. And therefore, we're all part of one. We're different. It's a little funny, but we're different but part of one. An idea would be like the human body. I mean, when you come through the door and say, oh, here comes a person's nose. Here comes your head. I like talking to you. Just bring your head in. Leave your feet out the door. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you're one person, but you want to analyze it. Well, heck, there's a big difference between a brain and a foot. So on one hand, you have different parts of your body, and on the other hand, you're all one. You're all the same person. And that's really a good example about all human beings in the whole world. Yes, we are all different. It doesn't mean we have to conflict with each other. On the contrary, to work with each other and to be one wholesome being. It's one big, beautiful world that's all together. So that's the deeper idea. Now the oil, it shows on the essence of something, because essentially that's what we were saying, that on one hand we're different externally, that's the 7 branches of the menorah, but the oil is the essence of the olive, it has to be crushed, and that shows that we're really one. We're really essentially the same thing. And that's where you get that. God is one, and really the whole world is one. We're all part of godliness. Again, externally, we don't see it. We're all different. We've just said that. But ultimately, if you really look deep, 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 you'll see that. I mean, that science is coming to that idea where atoms and even breaking up atoms and electrons, that really we're all made up of essentially the same thing, but we're just configured a little bit different. But essentially, the whole universe is really is made up of the same essential materials. So that's something beautiful about the Chanukah menorah also, that we've made out of olive oil. But the idea that it has to be pure, why does it have to be pure and impure? Because a person has to be pure to be connected to the Almighty. Again, in order to dig into that, I'm not saying dig a hole in the ground, you have to look deeper and contemplate how everything is deeper in one. I said science is getting to that idea, even looking at science. We're all part of the same structure in the entire world, even though we're all totally different, but we're all made up of the same basic building blocks that make up the world, and that's what the essence and impurity of using pure eyes in order to see how the world is pure in a certain sense. We're all one. Externally, maybe not. I mean, we see that, but essentially we're all one in the world. And that's another deeper idea, a deeper and a hidden idea of what's Chanukah all about. That even though that there's differences, menorah even symbolizes that we're all one. And really a deeper idea is that how do you get to the olive oil? I don't know. I don't know if everybody has seen it. I mean, I have seen an olive press, but maybe you go to the apple cider mills. In any case, almost essentially the same thing is they crush or they press the apples in between, and you get it. The apple cider, apple juice comes out. It's the same essential idea what they do with the olives. So that's a very deep idea also. Sometimes, again, the big question where we really always talk about why bad things happen to good people, why are people a little bit crushed or pushed to the wall? And, everybody has problems. No one's perfect. The world's not perfect. But in order to see, as we're saying, the world ultimately is perfect and the world is ultimately one, that's why sometimes, or maybe most of the times, we're crushed. We're crushed in order to see something deeper. It's like, oh, everything's perfect and everything's wonderful. So when you see something's wrong in the world, we'll say, well, it starts you thinking, where is God? Where is, what's the reason for all of this? And it pushes you to the wall. I give that example always. I mean, there's many examples, but you could say like a teacher in school. Oh, you beautiful children. Yeah, beautiful children and wonderful things, a wonderful subject. But we have homework, and you have a test, and the kids are kvetching, you say in Yiddish. They're complaining why. But, teachers not mean that they're pressing, again, crushing. Again, it doesn't crushing, you have to hit someone's head against the wall. Crushing them, pushing them in order to learn the material better, to get to a higher level. And that would be a good example why God crushes us, and again, hopefully it's not totally physically, but just we have problems and we have to be pushed in order to think about something a little bit deeper, why things are happening, just like a teacher with a student, and come to a deeper understanding of what the world's about. So this is a deeper idea of why there's olive oil. There's oil that, you can have oil, you can burn things like gasoline. Gasoline also just comes from the ground. I know it has to be processed, but comes from the ground and you light it up. But in any case, here's olives, a plant, and you have to, you eat an olive, there's no problem with that, it's a fruit. But if you crush it very deeply, then you get to see, the essence of what the olive is. And that's, again, a deeper idea of our lives and the world around us. No, God is ultimately good. You have all kinds of different philosophies. Why God is no good and he likes to see us suffer. That's absolutely not true. That he's only good and he was just pressing us. And yes, people are crushed in order to come to a higher understanding, a deeper idea. So that's another very deep idea of what Chanukah is telling us. And one more idea in the last few minutes. Now Chanukah doesn't happen to be by divine providence, is in the middle of the winter, really right in December, which is the shortest days of the year. I mean, a day is 24 hours, but what I'm trying to say is daylight. Daylight is it. So it's the dark part of the year. So we have to understand, in a certain sense, like we say spiritually, this is a dark world. There are a lot of problems in the world. There are a lot of, like we said, people are crushed. No one has 100% good things in this world. And even if you're good in your own life, but there's problems in the world. There's fighting and people are hungry and there's problems. If you look around, surely, even if everything is good with yourself, there's surely problems in the world. And we want to make it better. Yes, it is dark spiritually and maybe even not just maybe physically. It's a dark time of the year, and our job is to light the menorah one candle at a time, just in order to light up the world. Again, you have to light the candles, which are physical, real candles, but we're talking about a deeper spiritual idea. First night, one candle. Second night, 2 candles, goes on and on. Not just to light up the world with a candle, but constantly increasing the light that is part of the Chanukah menorah. On the increase, so too we should have a spiritual light in this world, totally on the increase. And thank you for let's say having a discussion of the deeper hidden ideas of Chanukah.